You stand in a cloister garden, and there it is, a lovely green vine climbing the stone wall, soft-looking, quiet, almost polite. A monk sees it and knows better. That wall should have stayed bare and holy. But down in the cracks, while everything above ground looks peaceful, the roots are already prying at the mortar. I'm the kind of guide who trusts the warning more than the pretty face. Because this is how trouble works in a garden. It arrives looking like decoration. It settles in like a blessing. Then it starts forcing itself into places it was never meant to reach. Which plant did the monks keep out of the cloister, and why was it worse than it looked? So here is the old monastic rule. Do not trust the bloom. Trust the roots, the runners, the seeds, the scraps left behind after you think the job is done. The monks did not fear a plant for being ugly. They feared it for being persistent. A pretty climber can be trimmed. A true invader comes back from a broken stem, a buried root, a seed carried in on the wind, and suddenly the whole bed is paying for one mistake. Walk into a neglected corner of a garden, and Japanese knotweed can look almost innocent. Tall canes, broad leaves, a neat little burst of green. But underground, it is already moving. The root network keeps pushing out of sight, slipping under paths, fences, sheds, anywhere it can find a gap. Once it gets a foothold, cutting the top down does not finish the story. Dig it out badly, dump the scraps, leave even tiny leftover pieces in the soil, and it can start the trouble again. That is the real terror, not the flower, the comeback. So the old warning was simple. Do not judge the garden by what is showing above ground. A plant can look calm, even beautiful, while the hidden half is building a problem you will spend years trying to undo. And if the underground thief is bad, the climber that blinds a whole tree is worse. Push through a wet hedge, and you will see it first on the wall, not the ground. English ivy, dark leaves, clean lines. It looks managed, almost noble, like the garden finally learned some discipline. That is the trick. The monks were not fooled. They kept it out of the cloister for a reason. Ivy does not rush. It simply climbs, then spreads, then locks itself over stone, bark, and soil in one dense green blanket. Once it is on a trunk, it hides the trouble underneath. Moisture stays trapped. Cracks stay hidden. The tree keeps weakening while the ivy keeps looking perfect. Here is what makes it dangerous. The very thing that seems orderly is the thing that smothers. It does not shout. It waits. It takes more light, more space, more time, and it keeps going. And then there is the plant that does not crawl so much as march. You step past a neat bamboo screen, and that is exactly when the trouble starts. The canes look tidy above ground, tall and elegant, almost calm. But running bamboo is sending spears under the soil the whole time, past fences, under paths, and straight over property lines. The old monks knew that trick. They kept it out of the cloister because a plant like this does not respect edges. What looks like privacy is often invasion with better manners. You cut the canes, and it looks solved for a week. Then another shoot comes up 2 yards away. Cut that, and the plant answers again. That is the real problem. The runners are hidden, protected, and already moving. A beautiful border is worthless if the roots refuse to stay home. And the monks also knew a climber that looked almost noble in bloom and still had a violent habit. You can see it on an old wall in spring, purple clusters hanging down like silk curtains, and for a second you forget to be cautious. That is wisteria. The monks did not forget. The blossoms are unforgettable, which is exactly why people forgive the plant too quickly. They see the flowers and miss the weight behind them. Wisteria does not just climb. It settles in, thickens, and starts leaning on whatever it finds. Give it a trellis, and it will strain it. Give it a branch, and it will twist it. Give it a porch post or a beam, and it will treat that support like a handle and keep pulling until the whole structure starts complaining. The real problem is not the bloom. It is the force underneath the bloom. And if you think only big woody plants are dangerous, the ground cover at your feet has another lesson. Step into a bed of periwinkle or mint, and it looks calm, low, soft, even useful. That is the trick. The monks feared these plants because they do not shout while they win. They crawl through runners, knit themselves into dense mats, and press down on every bare patch where a seedling ought to rise. You see green on top. Underneath, the soil is getting claimed, light gets blocked, water gets caught, new roots hit a wall, and the garden starts to look full, while the young plants quietly fail. So, yes, the carpet is pretty. That is exactly why it is dangerous. What turns these pretty invaders into a moral warning instead of just a gardening problem? You kneel at the border, and the problem is almost rude in its quiet. In Matthew 13, the warning is not about a plant standing alone. It is about weeds sown among wheat, where they hide in plain sight and make the whole field look acceptable until harvest day. That is the trick. Blending in buys them time. A monk would not see that as a decorative mistake. He saw a lesson in stewardship. The gardener's job was never to admire fullness. It was to guard what feeds life, to pull early, to thin hard, to keep one small unchecked thing from turning into a takeover. Because once a runner or seed head gets ahead, it does not ask permission. It spreads, it crowds, it rewrites the bed. The monks did not wait for trouble to bloom. They pulled early, watched the edges, and chose plants with limits instead of plants with ambition. That was the rule. I am talking about the kind of beauty that looks harmless in spring, then sends runners under the soil, climbing stems over everything, and surprise seedlings into every gap. That is what they feared. Not one flower. A pattern, something that spread unseen, came back every season, and slowly swallowed the space meant for food and order. Walk your own garden, and check for runners, climbing stems, and surprise seedlings at the edges. Catch them early, pull hard. Then tell me in the comments which beautiful plant fooled you first. Thanks for watching.